The first step that Brian took away from our general form of culture was in moving up to Haight-Ashbury during the wild Haight-Ashbury days, San Francisco, for those of you who just got to town. There was an interesting experience that Brian and I shared. I was then doing, this is in the late 60s, I was doing a daily comedy and talk show again, which ran for 5 years, from 68 to 72. And on one day I did one of my occasional hippie sketches. I had a long hairdo like Tarzan and a headband and a sort of Turkish-looking mustache and dark shades, and I certainly was not recognizable as myself. And the gimmick that day on the show involved my going out into Vine Street in front of our theater, hitchhiking. I had a microphone on me, and about every ninth car would start. It would stop for me. I'd jump in. The guy would say the conventional, where to, where are you going? I'd say, down to the corner, which got a big laugh each time I said it from the people in the studio who could hear what was going on. And the guy would look at me like I was nuts, and we'd get to the corner. I'd jump out of the car, run back, and do it again. You know. So at the end of the show that day, after a lot of laughs, I had this outfit, and I was already scheduled to go up to San Francisco to spend a few days with Brian. He was living with just a sort of a random group of about 9 guys, I guess, splitting up the rent in some pad in Haight-Ashbury. So I suddenly said to the wardrobe man, hey, give me all the wigs and the mustaches and the jacket and everything. And I may need this in San Francisco. So I checked into the, I think it was the St. Francis Hotel as Steve Allen, and came down about 20 minutes later, unrecognizable. And in fact, it was fascinating. As soon as I did that, I was the object of much scrutiny by the security people in the hotel. The doorman gave me a very sharp look. You know, maybe I was a car thief, he thought. So I took a cab over to Brian's address, and we spent about 3 days together with me dressed that way. I look hipper than he did. Well, not hipper, but more hippie-ish than he did. And at one point, when we were walking the streets, a couple of young straight teenagers came up, girls, and stood next to us and giggled. So I said to him, what was that? And he said, you just had your picture taken. The tourists love to stand next to hippies and take their picture. And about 20 minutes later, a busload went by. Out of every window, there were 19 cameras. So I put on a little show for them. I did a little dance step and, did the boogaloo and stuff. To this day, there are about 89 people around the country who have me on their home movies from the San Francisco trip and don't know it's me. So Brian and I had a lot of laughs at that point. But I guess it was a couple of years after that, he floated farther away. And then one day we got a letter from him saying he was never going to see us again. It was a strange letter. It wasn't from Brian's usual sweet self, likable self, and subtracted 11 years from his productive life.
How did Haight-Ashbury look to you, Steve? What did you, when you went to Haight-Ashbury, what did you see? What did it mean?
Well, the architecture, of course, was, I guess, sort of 1920s San Francisco. And it was neither good nor bad. It was just there. But the way of life was very different than conventional 50s America, certainly. And again, this was in the late 60s. There was the pad, as it was called. And sometimes it involved literal pad, just mattresses thrown around the floor. It didn't seem to be anybody's house. It was whoever happened to be in town that weekend, and often that could number 11 people or 14 people or 6 people. Men and women, sort of very relaxed. There was no such thing as the ladies' room or the men's room or the men's mattress for that matter. It was all very relaxed. And 2 or 3 of the guys that were with him during the 2 or 3 days there were members of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang. But one thing that was on the plus side of the hippie culture was conversation was very easy. Conversation with conventional people, Americans or many others, is a bit stiff and formal. We're all familiar with jokes that Americans used to make about the English 50 years ago. 2 Englishmen were on a desert island surviving a shipwreck. They never spoke because they hadn't been formally introduced, jokes like that. So the hippie culture was at the opposite end. Formalities were overlooked or ignored. And everybody was on a hey man basis from the first moment that they might encounter each other. And there's something nice about that. We should all be that open, I think, with each other. But I don't remember any big philosophical discussions. I can't recall, honestly, what did go on. We went to a rock concert, during all of which I literally spent like this. I love music, but I don't like it when it's too loud. And we just sort of San Francisco'd it up for our 3 or 4 days together. But it was a very different experience once he was a member of the religious commune. They read only the Bible. Almost all the cults were Bible-based. And a lot of crazy ideas.